Have you ever sat next to someone you once knew so well and suddenly felt like they were a stranger? Not because of what they said, not because of anything they did, but because their eyes no longer linger on you the way they used to. Their voice doesn't carry the same warmth. And conversations that once felt light and natural now easily turn into arguments. You may not believe it at first, but the cracks in a relationship often begin showing long before either person realizes it. Especially for women, pulling away from a relationship isn't usually a sudden decision, but the result of a long, quiet process of change. A process that spans months, woven into hormones, into behavior, into the silent shifts the body carries before the heart can find the words. When emotional connection begins to fade, a part of the brain called the amygdala, responsible for processing emotional threats, becomes more alert. It scans every small word, every movement, amplifying things that used to be harmless or even funny. What once made her laugh might now draw a sharp reaction, not because you've changed, but because her brain has started scanning for danger. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, the area that helps regulate emotion, begins to lose balance. This makes emotional reactions harder to control. You might start to notice small things. She avoids eye contact more often, seems distant during moments you used to share, or no longer looks forward to your usual outings. And in those silences, her body may be speaking first, sending quiet messages of retreat, even when her voice hasn't said a word. When the body starts wanting to feel different. Some changes seem small at first, but if you pay close enough attention, you'll feel them echo. The woman you love, who once didn't care much about appearances, starts buying new clothes, spends more time fixing her hair, learns to apply makeup again, chooses dresses with more thought, more intent. You might think, she just wants a fresh look. Maybe she's feeling inspired. But science has another perspective. When a woman begins to feel distant in a relationship, or when an emotional connection elsewhere starts quietly forming, her hormonal system responds. Specifically, her testosterone levels, though naturally low, can increase slightly. And that tiny shift is enough to trigger a chain reaction, an urge to reinvent, to explore a new version of herself, to reawaken her brain's dopamine reward system. Dopamine, in simple terms, is the brain's way of saying, "This feels exciting. Let's have more of it." A new fragrance, a different pair of shoes, a changed reflection in the mirror. It's not just about looking good. It's about feeling different, as if her body is whispering, "I'm ready for a different chapter." But this shift in behavior isn't just about beauty or confidence. It's often a biological sign that her mind is seeking something new, even if she hasn't fully admitted it to herself. So if you notice her putting more care into her appearance while growing quieter toward you, if she begins spending more time out alone, or seems increasingly distant without any conflict, what you're sensing may not be imagined. It might be her body moving ahead of her words. When touch turns into withdrawal. It's one of those things that's hard to explain. But if you felt it, you know exactly what it is. You reach for her hand, just like you always have, out of habit, out of love, out of the countless days when that gesture felt effortless. But this time, she pulls away. Not harshly, not even noticeably to someone watching, just a soft, almost reflexive retreat. You ask, "Is something wrong?" She says, "No, I'm just tired." And maybe you believe her. Because it doesn't feel like a lie, but deep down, something stirs. Something small but sharp. Science calls this a defensive response, an unconscious interaction between the skin, nervous system, and emotional memory. When the emotional bond starts to erode, the body begins reacting even before the heart admits it. It instinctively creates distance. It's not rejection. It's not resentment. It's the nervous system quietly saying, "I don't feel as safe here anymore." You'll start noticing she hugs less, and when you hug her, she doesn't hug back. Not because she's angry, but because her body is no longer leaning in. Even physical intimacy can start to feel mechanical, as if she's going through the motions, but her presence isn't really there. And in that moment, even though you still share a bed, still call each other by familiar names, you realize that the true distance has already begun from within. When the body tries to erase its own trail, sometimes the changes are so small you barely notice them at first. She gets home and heads straight for the shower. No hug, no smile, no pause to ask about your day. Just a quiet disappearance behind a closed bathroom door. Or maybe you see her glance at her phone, then quickly clear her browser history, turn off notifications, change her passwords. You ask, "Is everything okay?" She says, "I just want more privacy these days." And you believe her. Because privacy is fair, reasonable. You're not the suspicious type. But over time, things start to feel misaligned. She sleeps at different hours, wakes up earlier, goes out more often, alone, has urgent errands that never used to exist. From a scientific perspective, these might be signs that dopamine is being rewired. When emotional connection with someone new begins to take shape, even subtly, the brain craves novelty, excitement, secrets, and the body follows. She begins building private routines, stops sharing small details, leaves less behind, keeps more to herself. Ironically, the more she tries to hide, the more the body reveals. Because behavior doesn't lie as well as words do. There's hesitation in her movements, gaps in her gaze, a stiffness that wasn't there before. Tiny signs that scream quietly, if only you're listening. By then, you might not know exactly what's happening, but that feeling inside you, it's not paranoia, it's perception. Her body has already begun to speak, long before her lips ever will. When someone familiar becomes a stranger. Some mornings you wake up, look at the person lying next to you, and suddenly, you don't know what to say. You're not in a fight. Nothing feels obviously wrong, but their eyes no longer land on you. The usual "did you eat" sounds hollow, and small talk feels like a filler, not connection. You start to notice the tension. She's quicker to snap. You're quicker to pull away. Tiny things spark arguments. Moments feel heavier. And somewhere in that confusion, you ask yourself, am I still important to her? But sometimes, the truth is this. No one did anything wrong. No betrayal, no secret affair. Just biology quietly shifting over time. Her brain, her hormones, her nervous system, all sending messages. Something's changing. A new chapter is starting. And by the time her body is no longer responding to your touch, by the time her gaze doesn't soften the way it used to, by the time silence grows louder than words, the drift has already begun. You might wonder, how didn't I see this earlier? But deep down, you did. You felt it in the quiet, in the missed glances, in the way your hand lingered, but hers didn't return the touch. If there's one thing to remember, it's this: the body doesn't lie. Words can be rehearsed, smiles can be practiced, but the nervous system tells a truth that even she may not be ready to face. When someone familiar becomes a stranger, it's rarely sudden. It's the result of many quiet, invisible shifts that began long before the first word of goodbye. If any part of this story felt familiar, not because of the science, but because of a quiet ache you've carried, then thank you for listening. Sometimes what breaks us isn't a single moment, but a slow unraveling we don't know how to name. And if you're here, still watching, still breathing through the heaviness, you're not alone. There are more stories to tell, more quiet truths waiting to be heard. If this space felt safe to you, I'd love for you to stay. Subscribe so we can keep walking through these moments gently, together. Take care of your heart, and I'll see you in the next video.